Blog Talk Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have a problem. I would like to introduce
Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations Team.
And welcome to another edition of Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Radio. Today's show, we are going to be talking about the Allagash UFO Abduction case. And on the line with me today, I have Tim, the fabulous Brent, and the wonderful Nick.
Oh, yeah.
How are you guys doing today?
Good. Oh,
Today's show is going to be a 2-hour-long show. I guess Nick just changed it a minute ago. What do you think, Nick? You excited to talk about the Allagash for the next 2 hours?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm always up for UFOs and abductions.
Well, I guess Nick's going to be the main speaker for most of today's show. But I guess to start off the show, did you want to talk about your news articles first, Brent?
Sure. Let's see. All right. Says, let's see, a 460-foot long asteroid named the 2013 ET has whizzed past Earth on Saturday. The latest in our planet's galactic pinball contest, as you would say. It says earlier in the day that another one named the 2013 EC-20 passed even closer, and both within a month of the Chelyabinsk meteorite strike that, it's all famous all over the news. Mm-hmm. It says the enormous piece of space debris has passed just 2.5 lunar distances from Earth. The moon is approximately 238,000 miles from us, meaning the asteroid's flyby will be at a distance of, say, 600,000 miles from. So it's a little bit farther away from us, but, still pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it says some astronomers have compared its size that of a city block, others a football pitch. Its dimensions were widely given as 460 feet long and 210 feet wide. And it says the asteroid 2013 ET was first detected on March 3rd by the Catalina Sky Survey based at the University of Arizona, and now approaches the planet less than a week after it first hit the astronomers' radar. And the last part of it says it was not bright enough to view through standard personal binoculars or small backyard telescopes, but was visible using larger professional devices in observatories, one of which will broadcast its passage online. Which it already passed, so it's already passed. But that's kind of weird. Like, what do you think about that? I mean, it happened on Saturday, which was the 9th, but they barely found out like less than a week ago. So maybe like 6 days ago they found out.
And
what do
that's
you
pretty
think?
weird that an asteroid that big would pass by us and you wouldn't really even hear about it. Like you were saying, so you said they just found out about it?
Well, they just found out about it, like the 3rd, it says. So that would be Sunday. They found out about the prior Sunday, but it actually passed on the 9th. So just think about if it was something a lot bigger, how would we be able to see it, further out, or would it be, a lot faster that we wouldn't be able to recognize it till later in the week, say, if it were actually coming to hit Earth?
What do you think, Nick?
Stories like these are always pretty interesting to find out when an asteroid is almost going to hit the Earth, because if an asteroid does in fact hit the Earth, then we're in pretty big trouble. So it's almost startling to hear that they just discovered something of this magnitude last week.
Yeah, and they said that if it were to hit the Earth, it would probably be able to destroy, say, a small city. A small city, maybe the size of, I don't know, Palmdale, where I live. Pretty small city.
Yeah, and then I know with some asteroids they say an impact can launch a lot of dust and other debris up into the atmosphere, and that can block out the sun and do some various freaky things to the climate. So we definitely don't want any asteroids of any size hitting the Earth.
Yeah.
I'll say one of my news articles real quick, Brent, while you find your other one. I'm out of breath here. Tokyo is dense, packed, and crowded. If you don't have much money and want to live in places like Shibuya, you could live in a box, literally. A Japanese news program recently showed off an extremely cramped share house. There's a communal toilet and bath for the residents who sleep in coffin-like rooms. The sleeping setup is not ideal for those afraid of tight spaces. What's more, the bedrooms are stacked on top of each other. They look more like lockers, wrote one of the popular Japanese websites. It costs about $400 to $580 a month with utilities. You can rent an apartment there for that much, ironically. You get a real apartment for that much. So what do you think of that, Nick?
Well, first off, I think we found another wasabi. Shabuya! There's a Shibuya. Shibuya. I think we have another wasabi. Secondly, I've seen these apartments on the internet and on the news. They're pretty weird looking. I know some people live in cages. Like, they'll literally rent a cage that's pretty much the size of a dog cage for a few $100 a month. And the ones that you're describing are almost like storage cubbies that you would see inside a storage facility that they rent for about $500 or $600 a month. I think that's probably the best picture that an American could understand what we're talking about with these Japanese apartments. It's very similar to a small storage compartment at like something you see on Storage Wars, where the people go in and bring the stuff out that they want in an auction. Just imagine that with somebody's house inside.
I know Brent said that he was going to check that out. Did you end up checking that out, Brent?
No, actually I didn't.
Not that one?
No.
I don't know. They said you could rent an apartment for just as much, so I don't know. Personally, I don't know why anyone would even bother renting one of those if they could get a real house for that much.
I don't know. Maybe it's a Japanese hipster thing. It's cool or whatever they say over there to rent one of those apartments because maybe it's low energy and green and all that other nice stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the way I see it is, if you're traveling a lot, say you're like a businessman, and you're not really at home, like 10 months out of the year, that you don't really need a house since you're always traveling to like different places like all over the world. So it could be useful for like a businessman.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point, actually.
Mhm.
just like a place for you to go to sleep real quick and then get up and then gotta go to Tokyo.
Or if someone commutes far and they don't spend a lot of time at home, or maybe they like to go out a lot, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, I guess, perfect for someone who doesn't spend a lot of time at their house. They just kind of need a place to crash more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I don't know, Becky, are you on the line?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I keep saying you have a connection error, but yeah, I'll say, I don't know if you're listening, but have you seen those Japanese apartments where it's like almost like a storage locker, like Nick was saying?
A storage locker? So it's really small, you mean?
Yeah, it's pretty tiny. What's up, Big Red Okie?
Not much. I was going to say, I don't think I've seen that, but I know that my brother, he moved to Texas, and he moved into like a really like tiny, it's like a one-room apartment basically. I don't know if it's supposed to be like the same thing, but I just know he got a really, really tiny apartment. Maybe it's something like that.
I didn't know Becky had a brother.
Yeah, I have an older brother. He's 4 years older than me.
Well, the Partridge family keep growing day by day.
I tell you, well, Brett, did you want to see your next article?
What's that?
I said, did you want to say your next article?
Oh, yeah. All right, let's see. It says there's a giant camel found in the Arctic, or camel fossil found in the Arctic. Camels are well known for their ability to survive the hot and dry conditions of the desert, but a study suggests they once thrived in colder climates. Scientists have unearthed fossilized remains of a giant species of camel in Canada's high Arctic. An analysis of protein found in the bones has revealed that this creature, which lived about 3.5 million years ago, is an ancestor of today's species. The researcher, Dr. Mike Buckley, an author of the paper from the University of Manchester, said, "What's interesting about this story is the location. This is the northernmost evidence of camels ever found." And it says, the mid-Pliocene epoch was a warm period of the Earth's history, but surviving in the Arctic would have still been tough. And it says the Arctic camel would have had to cope with long and harsh winters with temperatures plunging below freezing. There would have been snowstorms, and months of perpetual darkness. Nonetheless, at this time, the polar region would have been covered in forest. While scientists have known for some time that camels evolved in North America, with the earliest creatures dating back about 45 million years ago, they were astonished to find a species at such a high altitude. And the article goes on, but that's just a gist of it.
That's pretty cool. I know they're finding all these new fossils every day. What were you going to say, Nick?
I was just going to say, I didn't know camels originally came from North America. That's an interesting tidbit. I always thought that they came from the Middle East or maybe Asia, not North America. That's pretty interesting to learn.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, Becky, in your fossil research, what do you think?
Oh my God! Did they actually say that they came from North America? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That is really interesting. I've never heard that, and I've never heard anything about Arctic camels, and I just think that sounds really neat to imagine them in the snow or just in a much colder region. I just think that sounds really cool.
Brent is a camel.
The one in Spells, is it called the Panda? Yes.
I have one more news article. I wrote, the meteorite that crashed in Russia was apparently hit by an unidentified flying object, causing it to explode and shatter over the Urals, it's been claimed. The bizarre theory is based on analysis of blurry footage of the space rocket that streaked across the morning sky. UFO enthusiasts insist a small object can be seen colliding with the meteorite on its trajectory through the atmosphere, despite the fact that there were no reports of Russia launching missiles down to the intruder, they claim. But on at least 3 films, you could see the space rock hit the meteorite, it says. Or that's what they called it, a space rock. The minuscule oblong-shaped object flies into it, and the meteorite explodes and falls, says an individual. He's stressed. Such a number of videos made from different angles leads us to believe that something has blown up the meteorite. He claimed that in the weeks before the meteorite, there was an upsurge of UFO sightings in the Urals, followed by none at all since the incident. So what's your theory on this, Nick?
I've seen the pictures that you're talking about, and they are very peculiar. My guess would be that perhaps the Russian government fired a missile or something at it in order to divert the meteorite or to destroy it. However, maybe there was a flying saucer going through the air that kind of had an accident with this meteorite. That's also a theory that we need to consider. But as of right now, with the information that I have, I think that the most plausible explanation is that the Russian government did indeed fire some type of ballistic at it in order to divert or destroy the meteorite itself.
Yeah. Well, what's weird is they claim they fired no rockets at it, but you think that realistically, like you were saying, that they probably would. But at the same time, would the UFO be that careless to let it get hit by a meteor like that?
Yeah, that's the thing. So there's two things. Well, you brought up one thing to remember. I do not think that a UFO or a flying saucer would be very careless as to fly into a meteorite. And then secondly, the United States and Russia, actually Russia and pretty much all of the Western world, are at an odd place. The relationship between Western Europe, America, and Russia is not a very good one right now. So Russia would not want to give away any secrets pertaining to its weapons to the Western world. They want to keep us guessing and probably afraid of them because we really don't know what they have. We don't know what they've developed since the Cold War. I mean, in the Cold War, they were nearly our technological equals, but now they may be our equals, or perhaps they've even surpassed us. We really don't know what Vladimir Putin's hiding behind the Iron Curtain, I guess you could call it.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. I don't know, Brent, do you think a UFO would be that careless to get hit by a meteor, or maybe it was in the wrong place at the wrong time?
Yeah, well, I mean, there have been instances where UFOs have been hitting jet airliners or running into them. So I think it could be possible that, it could have been hit by a meteorite, or it just wasn't the wrong place at the wrong time, or, phased in at the wrong place at the wrong time, didn't know something was going to happen, and then boom, just gets hit.
That's true. You have anything to say arguing back at Brent?
No, Brent had a point that sometimes UFOs have collided with airplanes. The only scenario that really creeps into my mind where that would happen is perhaps the UFO had malfunctioning equipment of some sort that knocked the UFO off course or it could be an untrained crew that didn't know what they were doing with the UFO. So it is possible that a flying saucer crashed into the meteorite, but I'm going to stick to my guns and say it was Russian missiles instead.
You're going to make Brent mad.
I will.
All right, well, we're going to go to a quick commercial break, and when we get back, we are going to go on to our topic of today, and you're listening to BFP Radio.
Yeah.
chocolate tea. Chocolate flavored Bosco is mighty good for me. Mama puts it in my milk for extra energy. Bosco gives me iron and sunshine vitamin D. Oh, I love Bosco. That's the drink for me.
Welcome back, CSP Paranormal Radio. Today's topic, we are talking about the Allagash UFO Abduction. Say, Nick, did you want to get started with today's topic?
Yes, let's jump right into the thick of things. Today, we're talking about the Allagash UFO incident in the series of abductions, which is pretty famous along with Roswell and Kecksburg and the Flatwoods Monster. It's one of my favorite things to discuss. The Allagash Waterway is a series of lakes and canals in the breathtaking mountains of Maine. This lovely area would be the site of one of the most discussed and best documented alien abduction cases on record. A dramatized version was featured on the Unsolved Mysteries television show. The Allagash incident would involve multiple witnesses, 4 to be exact, twin brothers Jack and Jim Weiner, along with their friends Chuck Rack and Charlie Foltz. The 4 men had met while studying at the Massachusetts College of Art, and they were all beginning their respective careers. So, what do you know about the case, Chair? Do you want me to go on with an outline of the case in general, or do you want to give something that you know?
Well, I think before you get started with the actual case guts, I guess you'd call it, I guess the best way to start is the trip starts in Northern Maine. Just in general, you figure that's a high UFO activity. There are a lot of abductions up there. There's, I don't know, anything else? I'm trying to think. You got to figure there's not really any towns up there. Southwestern Maine is the main populated area. If something like that was going to happen, even back then, you figure it would happen up in that general area of Maine, more than likely.
Right, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Maine is very, very similar to areas like the Pacific Northwest and much like the northern Nevada area that we frequent for our UFO cases. Very mountainous, very remote, there's very few people. It's a perfect spot for paranormal activity of any type to occur, especially UFOs.
Yeah, let alone back then, too.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Nick, if you want, you can get started with the actual contents of the abduction.
Well, on Friday night, August 20th, 1976, 4 young art students in their early 20s left Boston, Massachusetts for a canoe and camping trip in a wilderness area of northern Maine along the Allagash River. The group consisted of identical twins, Jack and Jim Weiner, Charlie Foltz, and Chuck Rack. Upon arrival at a staging point, they hired a pontoon plane, which flew them in their canoes to Telos Lake on the Allagash Waterway. During the next several days, they canoed and camped along the waterway. On the evening of Thursday, August 26th, they reached Eagle Lake, set up camp, and decided to go night fishing for trout. The pitch darkness of the area necessitated the building of a huge bonfire to mark their campsite that they could find their way back to it. Shortly after beginning to fish, Chuck became aware of a feeling of being watched. So far, you got 4 college buddies going out on what they deem will be a very normal camping trip in northern Maine. I can attest to what this experience is like somewhat because my parents brought me in these mountains, in the mountains of Maine and New Hampshire. Ever since I was about 2 or 3 years old, they would bring me on camping trips with them because they frequented those mountains very often, and we would go fishing and then hiking and whatnot. And again, I would like to stress that this area is very densely forested and it's very remote. I want to just keep beating those points and to kind of set the mood, I guess, so people can get a good idea of what this experience is like. And this guy Chuck became aware of being watched when he and his buddies were out on a night fishing trip. Jeremy, in other UFO cases, there are reports of people who feel like they're being watched. Is there any that you could maybe just give as a point of comparison really quickly to the listeners?
You mean to abduction cases, or do you mean people that have see weird things like that?
People that feel like they're being watched. Like, I'll just share one quick one and then maybe proceed with the story. We've talked to several witnesses out in Ely, Nevada, about some stuff they've seen out there in the mountains. And one of the witnesses told us that there's these strange objects you see in the mountains. When you see them, it feels like you're being watched, which immediately brought back this Allagash incident the second we were interviewing him, and we asked him if he knew about the incident, and he didn't. So I think that's very interesting to see that there's people that are in the mountains seeing some weird stuff, and then they feel like they're being watched. And then on totally different sides of the country on top of that, which makes it even more interesting. Don't you think that's interesting, Jeremy?
Oh, yeah. I know we had that guy that said that he had seen lights coming in and out of the woods nearby his workplace. He was saying that they felt like they were being watched. I know there was a time that we felt like we were being watched when us ourselves were driving through a nearby canyon by where we live, and the whole entire car lit up a bright reddish color. Dr. Brent, do you want to say the story really quick for our listeners?
I remember that story.
Oh, which one?
When the whole car lit up red, and we felt like we were being watched right before that happened.
Oh, yeah. This was like, I don't remember when it was or what the year was, but anyways, it was me, Tim, and Jeremy, and we were all just, piled up in my car, and we went out to Blue Diamond to actually look for UFOs and the Sand Yeti. And after we did our thing, we didn't really experience that much. We started heading back, and I think it was around 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And we were the only ones on the side on that back road, and there was no one else out there besides us driving out there. And I'm driving, and I turn back to say something to Tim, because Tim's sitting in the back seat, hiding under my Mario blanket, just for added information. And I look at him, and then the just the inside of the car just lights up red. And there's nothing in my car that could just, emanate some sort of light that would just fill the entire car. And that was just really, really strange, and just something that I have never, ever experienced. And to this day, I still think we got abducted, honestly.
I kind of think that would be a possibility.
Did you guys have any missing time?
Well, I didn't notice that at the time. Did you, Brent?
At the time, I didn't think to look at the clock to see, because I don't know. It was just the timing, because we were just having a good time talking about random junk like we usually do, and after the fact, though, I did look at the clock, but I didn't remember what time it was beforehand, so I kind of couldn't really see if there was actually missing time.
Yeah, we probably were abducted, though.
Now
we're going to undergo hypnosis, Brent, and then you're going to encounter
Tim,
horrible,
I can't tell what you're saying. You sound like a robot.
There's like an echo or something.
Yeah.
Well, I said, can you hear me now?
No, I think it's because you're close to Nick, so it's making a bad echo, I think.
Well, I guess to get back to the story, This guy Chuck and his other 3 buddies are out on a midnight trip, and they are going fishing. And Chuck says that he feels like he's being watched. And Chuck says, I turned towards the direction from where I felt this and saw a large, bright sphere of colored light hovering motionless and soundless above about 200 to 300 feet above the southeastern rim of the cove. Chuck yelled for the others to look behind them. There, rising above the trees, was a huge oval glowing object. As our eyes became adapted to its intense brightness, a gyroscopic motion was noted, as if there were pathways of energy flowing equatorially and longitudinally from pole to pole. This divided the sphere into 4 oscillating quadrants of bright-colored light. The color changes were very liquid and enveloping, as if the entire object had a plasmatic motion to it, like thick sauce does as it starts a rolling boil. And I have some, I have various different descriptions of this object. I'm looking through my notes for the other one where it kind of gets into a description of the coloration of the object and whatnot. But, let's see. They said when they were out on the lake and they found this glowing orb, they said it seemed much brighter than a star. They said the orb was hovering over the trees a couple hundred yards away. They said the object changed colors as it moved back and forth. Red, then green, then a whitish yellow. And they said the massive object, yes.
So this object, they're out in the middle of the woods, they're in a canoe in the middle of the lake. They see this object that's brighter than a star, and it's sitting like amongst the trees, or a little bit higher than the trees, you were saying, right?
Yeah, there was, I think it was about 200 to 300 feet above the trees, Chuck said.
Okay, continue.
Well, they said that this object, which was changing colors that looked like a star, red, green, and whitish yellow, they said that the massive object was estimated to be about 80 feet in diameter. The object slowly moved across the tops of the trees along the bank, and as it came closer to the 4 fishermen, Charlie Foltz signaled an SOS with his flashlight at the object. Immediately, the object silently moved toward the canoe. This is pretty interesting. We saw this on the Unsolved Mysteries version of the account, where they were sitting in the canoe, and when they saw this bright thing that looked like a moving star, they flashed SOS to it using the flashlight, which definitely got the attention of this thing. Do you think that was a wise idea, Jeremy?
No, that's a very, very bad idea.
Becky would do that.
Would I?
Well, Nick,
I don't think I'd want to try to get his attention.
Well, Tim,
yeah.
Before we get going a little bit with the story, can you describe an incident that, or at least Nick, I know Nick's seen it, can you describe the incident involving a police helicopter in California where they shined their spotlight at it, at a UFO?
Okay. Yeah, on an episode of Unsolved. Oh, no, this was on an episode of Paranormal Witness, actually on the Sci-Fi Channel. They had a story where 2 police officers were on a routine training flight in a helicopter. And when they were flying on their route, they came across this glowing object that was perched amongst the trees. They wondered what it was, and they decided to flash their spotlight onto this thing to see what it was. And the second they flashed the spotlight onto the object, it shot into the sky and began to hover parallel to the helicopter, and it then began to circle around it. And as it was circling around it, the police officers panicked, as most humans would, and they decided to try to get away a little bit. But then the object flew into the helicopter itself, not really crashing into it very hard, just more of a nudge. And it tapped it, and then it bounced back to, again, hover parallel to the helicopter. So after that, the helicopter then turned around and went after this object to basically get a better look at it, to see what was circling it and bumping into it. And then when they went after it, the object had shot across the sky, and there was a high-speed chase between this UFO and a police helicopter. That's a...
So I was just saying that's a good example of why you don't do that. You continue, Nick.
All right.
Okay, so it says on this lake, they see an object in the sky, and he shines an SOS at it. Now what happens?
Yeah, he shines an SOS, and their guarded curiosity now turned into a frantic dash for the bank. As they paddled as fast as they could, a hollow light came from the object, engulfing the men and their canoe. The next thing the men knew, they were standing on the bank again. Charlie pointed his flashlight toward the object again. This time it rose up and out of their view as it showed its beam once more before disappearing into the Allagash sky. Wondering what had transpired, the men were shocked to see their once glowing fire to be nothing but smoldering ashes. This would have taken several hours, and the four friends wondered what had happened to the last couple of hours that had passed by. It was pretty weird. One moment they're standing in a canoe, flashing a light at this glowing object that is changing colors in the sky. Then the next minute they find themselves back at their campsite, but it appears that several hours had passed by. So basically it appears that for a period of time that these men had become unconscious.
Mm-hmm. But were they sitting back in their canoe, or were they standing on the shoreline?
They were standing on the shoreline at their campsite. So apparently, not only had they been knocked unconscious and then awoken, they were put unconscious and then moved back to their campsite by whatever this object was.
It does prove they're intelligent.
So, what do you think happened? If you think that there was put back on the shore, or where is it? Did they walk out of this craft, or what exactly happened?
Well, that's the thing. No one knows. Not even the people who were abducted themselves know what happened, because they were unconscious for a period of time. I don't know if any of you have ever been unconscious for an hour or two or even a few minutes. I was in a car accident about 10 years ago, and I was rendered unconscious for basically a day. And, I can tell you that the last thing I remembered that night was I went to sleep on the side of the door in the back seat of the van we were driving, and then I woke up in a hospital bed surrounded by my family, and my eyes were all hurting, and my vision was blurry. I thought I had died and gone to heaven for a second, but I had no idea what happened to me, really, between the period of the impact in the car accident and me waking up in the hospital bed. I had to ask my sister what happened between those various points of time, because she was the conscious one in the car accident. So to basically relate this back to this incident is these gentlemen were in their boat fishing, flashing the light at this object, and then they were pulled into the spacecraft by this beam of light that shot from the object onto the boat. And then they were rendered unconscious, and then they were put back down onto the shoreline by probably the same technology that the light beam was using, and they woke up and found themselves on the shoreline. So they cannot know, and we cannot know, what had transpired between the point of flashing the SOS and then finding themselves on the shoreline because they were unconscious. However, as we will get into further on during the show later on, there were some series of hypnotic therapy sessions that these gentlemen underwent, and some very disturbing details were unveiled during these hypnotic therapy sessions.
Well, I know that that fire that they said they built on the Unsolved Mysteries version of this, they actually had them build a fire that was in similar size, and the fire was pretty big. I guess they said that they had built it like giant on purpose, just in case they were to fall asleep, so they would have their fire going all night. But yeah, Nick. Anyways, would you like to continue on with more of the story?
Yes. Okay. All right, here we go. And again, Jack Weiner said there was no mistake that the light beam had taken them. Because then he says he remembers standing on the lakeshore watching the object hovering 50 to 75 yards, and the search beam went upward in the sky and they saw it move away. Wait. That might be a little later during the incident. I'm sorry, my notes are a little mixed up here. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, wondering it had transpired, the men were so shocked to see their once glowing fire to be nothing but smoldering ashes. This should have taken several hours, and they wondered what had happened. Very little was said as the four men packed up their gear and went back to the everyday grinds of their respective careers. In time, the night of the UFO would begin to have a profound effect on their lives. Jack Weiner was the first to start having nightmares. In these dreams, he saw beings with long necks and large heads. He saw the beings examining his arm, while Jim, Chuck, and Charlie sat on a nearby bench, not able to intervene. Now, in the Unsolved Mysteries dramatization of this, they had all four men in a white room sitting on benches, and they were not clothed. So it's as if they were awaiting a medical examination of some sort. Mm-hmm. But it goes on to say the beings or the aliens had large metallic glowing eyes with no lids, and their heads were insect-like with 4 fingers. The other 3 men were experiencing very similar dreams with short mental clips of that awful night on the lake. In 1988, out of curiosity, Jim Weiner attended a UFO conference hosted by Raymond Fowler. Weiner met Fowler afterwards and related this strange encounter. The investigator was excited about Jim's story, especially the fact that it was a multiple witness encounter. Fowler suggested to Jim that he and the others undergo regressive hypnosis. After the sessions, it was revealed that all 4 of the men had been abducted and subjected to humiliating physical examination, including the taking of skin and fluid samples. The men's description of the aliens were consistent in being artists. They were able to make detailed sketches of the entities, the craft, and the examining instruments. Chuck Rack added that the aliens' test area was similar to a vet's office with a silvery table. He also related a strange fact. He had much difficulty in focusing on the aliens. When he tried, he could not put an exact image to them. He compared it trying to tune into a fuzzy radio station. After the psychiatric examinations, all 4 of the men were deemed to be mentally stable, and they all passed lie detector tests. All of the information gleaned from the detailed hypnotic sessions and investigative reports provide strong evidence that something not of this world was encountered by these 4 men on the Allagash waterway in 1976. This case is still considered unexplainable by conventional scientific means. So, their story sounds very similar to another story in the history of UFO abduction lore, and that would be the case of Betty and Barney Hill. Jeremy, you know that Betty and Barney Hill had weird dreams and weird memories like this where they were probed and prodded by the aliens. Do you recall any descriptions of those memories or events from Betty and Barney Hill's case?
Well, I know that Betty, she said that she had awoken and she remembered that these beings were trying to mess with Barney's dentures. She said that they took these dentures out and were messing around with them, but then they were pulling on her teeth, trying to get her teeth to come out. And then I know that she said that she had memories of them getting put back in their car and the ship flying away, we had, I'm trying to think what her name was. We had Betty and Barney, was it Betty's niece? Yeah, remember we had her on the show as an interview a couple of years ago. She had some pretty interesting stories.
Yeah.
Do you remember what her name was, Tim? Sorry, I'm trying to think here. I'm showing up blank.
I don't recall her name right away, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Anyways, continue, Nick.
Well, I think an interesting thing, here's a couple footnotes for the narrative that I just described. It said that during the time after the UFO abduction, Jim, and that would be Jim, I think he's one of the Wiener brothers. Yes, Jim Wiener suffered a head injury which caused temporal limbic epilepsy. Sorry to say that 3 times fast. During treatment, Jim's doctors asked him to report any unusual circumstances that might be symptomatic of his condition. And that's when he began to describe the strange experiences he had, such as the sightings of strange creatures, levitation from bed and temporary paralysis, while something was done to the genitals. He also described their encounter with the UFO in the period of missing time. Jim's doctors advised him to contact the UFO researcher, as they felt that Jim and his friends may have been involved in a UFO abduction. And that's when he then went to the conference and contacted Mr. What was this gentleman's name again?
Fowler? Was it Fowler?
Fowler, yes. When he contacted Mr. Fowler. So this guy was suffering from some form of epilepsy. And that's when he began to have strange visions of these creatures, and he said he was levitating from the bed, and he felt like he was being paralyzed, and then he had weird things done to him. Now, I would like to bring up another side note involving his head injury. I'll play skeptic's advocate for one point, and then my second point, I will get into how epilepsy can bring back memories and make you relive them in a way. First, to play skeptic's advocate. Well, Jim suffered a head injury, and we all know that when you suffer a head injury, that it can make you see things and do things that are not real. So why don't we just dismiss this case altogether and just say that this guy got hit in the head and he was seeing things, Jeremy? Why should we believe that this was a UFO abduction if this guy was hit in the head and he started seeing things? He'd just be just like any other Looney Tune you find in the mental ward who had head injuries as well.
Well, I think these people didn't really have anything to gain from this. If anything, these people had a lot more to lose than to gain. I mean, you figure any normal person that has a professional job or wants to stay professional in their community is not going to go forward and say, "Oh, I had aliens come operate on me," and stuff like that, you know. I just think that these people seem like honest gentlemen who are just on an honest, casual vacation, and one of their friends had to do something stupid like shining the light at the UFO. What do you think, Brent?
Sorry, I probably missed most of what you guys were talking about since my phone cut out.
Oh, I said, Nick was saying, how should you believe that those people were abducted and aren't just crazy or aren't hallucinating if they've seen that stuff?
Well, I mean, most people, they have the, genuine understanding of how, like you could actually see in their eyes that they actually have fear, like in their eyes from their horrific experience, if it was horrific or if they didn't have anything, crazy that happened, but they were just abducted and they don't remember. I mean, that's one of the big key things.
Mhm.
Well, he was talking about that guy specifically with the head injury. I mean, I would say one of the things that makes him more believable is that there are, 3 other witnesses? There was 3 other people on that trip that experienced the same thing that he experienced. So you can't you can't just blame it on his head injury because there's 3 other people who don't have injuries and they experienced the exact same thing. I don't know if they experienced the same thing that he did afterwards. They're talking about the levitating and stuff, but they all experienced the UFO.
Definitely, I definitely agree with that. Like I said, I was just playing skeptic's advocate to kind of do opposing viewpoints type of thing. But here's my other point that I wanted to make about epilepsy. My ex-girlfriend had epilepsy, and one of the side effects or symptoms of epilepsy is it can make you have reoccurring nightmares, or I don't know if you want to call them nightmares. It can make you literally relive things that you had seen in the past, traumatic experiences that you had seen in the past. She had some various traumatic experiences as a child, and she would literally get up in the middle of the night because of her epilepsy, and she would start acting out as if this traumatic event was still going on. These things really did happen. These weren't things that were fabricated by her mind. Rather, her brain retrieved these episodes that had occurred in her childhood, and she acted them out later on, 15, 20 years later. So the epilepsy actually, from this guy, might bolster his credibility, because if he was unconscious and he was subject to various types of probing and prodding by the aliens, subconsciously he remembered these things, and when he had his epilepsy, the epilepsy pulled those memories out of his subconscious, and then he began to act out, I guess you could say, those traumatic experiences. That's pretty weird, isn't it?
It kind of triggers the regression, I guess, kind of like the hypnotic regression. I guess that epilepsy kind of triggers it.
Yes, very similar. Like I said, yeah, it triggers things that you don't even remember. It can bring them back. Like I said, my ex-girlfriend would we'd be sleeping in bed at night, and then she would get out of bed, and then she'd start saying things and doing things as if she was at her childhood home from 10 years prior. And then when she would snap out of it, I'd be like, what in the world was that? And she's like, oh, this and this happened, and I was just acting it out because I thought it was going on right here and now, because that's what my epilepsy does. So this guy was basically reliving those. He relived his abduction on a nightly basis because of his epilepsy. And I have some more detailed notes about the hypnosis sessions. It says, under hypnosis, all 4 witnesses relived detailed and traumatic UFO abduction experiences during the period of missing time. That is, the period between the shining of the light at the burning bright object in the sky and coming back onto the shore near their camp. But all were transferred from their canoe into the UFO by the hollow tube-like beam of light. On board, they encountered strange hominid creatures that exerted some kind of mind control over them, so they could not resist their demands. All were made to undress and sit on a plastic-like bench in an area illuminated by diffuse white light. After looking at their eyes and in their mouths with a pencil-sized rod with a light on its tip, the aliens placed them in a harness and flexed their arms and legs. Then one by one, they were made to lie on a table, where each was examined by a number of strange handheld and larger machine-like instruments that lowered over their bodies. During the segment of the examination, the alien entities removed samples of saliva, skin scrapings, blood, feces, urine, and sperm from each of the abductees. After the examinations, the abductees were made to dress and to enter another room, which had a round portal in one of its walls. They were lined up and made to walk into the portal. Strange sensations, surged through their bodies as they found themselves floating down the hollow beam of light into their canoe, which was now in shallow water near the campsite. The tube-like light seemed to hold the canoe steady in place as each was placed in it in the same seating position they were in prior to the abduction. As the hypnosis sessions continued, much detail was recovered about their onboard experience. That's some pretty gruesome things that happened to them on the alien aircraft, wasn't it, guys?
Yeah, pretty intense.
Oh, yeah. All this the medical stuff. I don't...
Oh, yeah, sorry, somebody in our chat just reminded me, Kathleen Martin was the one that was on our show.
Yeah, Kathleen Martin. I don't know. I think the medical experiments were possibly for their hybrid programs, maybe.
Tim, we can't tell what you're saying. You sound like you're a robot.
He said he was wondering if they're part of the hybrid program. Which I think is a different possibility.
I don't know. That's a good question. What do you think, Nick?
Well, if the aliens were here purely to do research, which I think many extraterrestrials come to our planet to do, it would make sense for them to take samples of all these different types of things. That's what we do whenever we go into the rainforest or the desert or any type of environment and we find a new type of animal. We get a specimen, and then we get skin samples, fur samples, blood samples. We even map out its genetic code. So it is only done, these types of things are only done because of the spirit of scientific research. Now, part of that scientific research could be for a hybrid program. We cannot rule that possibility out. So, in short, I just want to say that these medical procedures are done for some type of research. Now, whether it is to clone people or to make hybrids, or maybe they just are doing it for the sake of knowledge, I don't know. But the bottom line is that these medical procedures are done for research.
Oh, yeah.
And here's another interesting note. Also, it was discovered that the twins had bedtime visitations by alien creatures and abduction experiences since early childhood. These experiences were relived in vivid detail under hypnosis. During the course of the investigation, an extraordinary event occurred. Jack and his wife, Mary, were abducted from their remote mountain home in Townsend, Vermont. During the night of May 20th, 1988, Jack's dog woke him up when he scratched at the door, wanting to go out to relieve itself. When Jack got up to put him out, he was shocked to see a blue light shining through the kitchen window. He went up to look and saw a glowing object hovering around the field adjoining his house. He decided to bring the dog back in the morning. He thought he dreamed about the whole thing. However, under hypnosis, he relived a shared abduction experience with his wife in minute detail. Mary only remembered dreaming about deer with big eyes coming to their bedside. She did not respond to hypnosis. The following is an excerpt from Jack's hypnosis sessions. Before I get on to the excerpt of the hypnosis session, Jeremy, or Tim, anyone out there on the panel, do you guys recall any cases where people were abducted multiple times? Isn't that actually the common thing with abductees?
Well, actually, yeah, Brent, can you talk about the communion story? You said you're familiar with that one.
I didn't know I was familiar with that.
Okay, well, in the book Communion, Whitley Strieber said that he was abducted several different times over the course of years, I think it was. He says that these aliens talked to him and did different types of medical procedures on him. There's also, I'm trying to think what his name is. The guy who was abducted by Indrid Cold, back with the Mothman sightings. William, what's his name, Derringer? Something like that? Well, yeah.
Oh, I just watched the documentary on that. part.
Well, he was abducted several different times, but he was a contactee, as he called it, not an abductee, which means that he wasn't really operated on. He just kind of was brought around and they showed him around. I don't know what you want to call it. They didn't operate on him. They did other things with him. That was an interesting story.
Yeah, those are all definitely interesting stories. Again, I think it's the common thing for people to be abducted more than once. Because I've seen many documentaries, I've read books, and we've done our own investigations, and we've talked to a great deal amount of people that have said that they weren't only abducted once, they were abducted 2, 3, 4 more times. And also to go back to the Ely case, to reference back to that, Jeremy, some of the witnesses we've talked to say that they have strange lights that go around their house, just like the one in the abduction experience here by Jack Weiner. Would you like to elaborate more on that, or?
You said talk more about what they had seen?
Yeah, talk about the glowing balls of light that go around the house in Ely that some of our witnesses describe.
Oh, well, these lights that this guy was telling us, he said they work at a copper mine, or is it Coppernick, or anyway, some kind of a mine. Well, he said that these lights, they're red, amber-colored, and white. He said these lights, they come out of the woods, they circle around, this is his exact words. He said that these lights, they circle around the mining area where they work. And it's almost as if they're watching them. He says that if you try walking towards these lights, he says that these lights disappear. But if you walk backwards, he said they'll turn back on and they'll start moving around in the sky. Well, these lights, he says, sometimes they glide through the woods, almost like the Rendlesham Forest type lights that most people have heard about. And these lights, they sometimes don't even touch the ground. They go up into the sky and start dancing around, is what he says word for word. Well, anyways, sometimes these lights, they land on the ground. Sometimes they lift up and fly around. I don't know. To me, it sounds like whatever these lights are, they're very curious, whatever they are.
Yeah, definitely. I just think it's an interesting phenomena that we have multiple people from multiple locations from multiple times, people from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, saying that they have these types of lights that come down and then dance around their house and come up to their windows and whatnot. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some abductees out in the mountains of Ely when we dig further into the case. Things just get weirder and weirder with our own cases. We keep looking into it. But to get back to the Allagash incident, I want to read some information from the transcript of these hypnosis sessions from Jack Weiner. Quote, he says, "It's blue, a blue light, and I think that's funny. That's not the moon. Then I go to the window, and I look out the window, and what I see is amazing. I see a big bright light, and it's right over the truck in the field outside the house. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't believe that. And so I say, Mary, get up and look. And I run to the door, and I go out the door, and I'm running towards the light up in the field. Then I see the dog running alongside me. And so I pick him up, and I run back to the house. The light is still there, and it's moving. Then I put the dog back in bed, and I'm thinking, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this now. I don't want to look at the light. So I'm going back to bed, and I'm thinking, I don't want to deal with this now. Why are they here now? And I'm scared. So I pull the covers over my head, and Mary's next to me. And then I know that something's in the house. I just know that they're there, and I'm under the covers, and I think, oh God, why are they here now? I don't want this to happen. He gasps. And then the covers move, and I feel something on the cover. And the covers are drawn, and I'm looking there, and I was right. They're right there. Oh God, they're right next to my bed. It was big eyes and a big head, and it's dark, and there's light coming behind it from the door. And it's just taking the covers away, and I don't want to look at it. And I look at Mary. There's another one there, and it's next to Mary. And I wished I could go something, but I can't. I have to do what they want, and the light is out there, and they want me to go out there. They're lifting me. Mary's standing, and they're making us move toward the light. But the dog isn't doing anything. We're through the door. We wait. We walk up the lawn, and I feel like I'm floating out. Our feet are on the ground, but my feet are not doing what I want them to. That's a pretty weird description of the abduction here by Jack Weiner. This is an abduction that occurred 12, 13 years after the Allagash incident, but I think it's very interesting to talk about because it has a connection with the Allagash incident itself. What do you think about that abduction experience, Jared?
It's strange. I mean, he's obviously terrified of these beings even touching him and being around them. I mean, it's easy for you and me to say, oh, well, it's kind of obvious what's going on, but you figure once it actually happens to you and you see some kind of strange being that may not even be from this world, that would be a pretty terrifying experience. Most of these memories, I almost wonder if they're not forgotten in a sense, or I don't know if that's the right way to say this. I wonder if the aliens don't make them forget these memories, or if they're just so terrifying that people seem to forget them on their own, kind of store it in the back of your mind. Like for instance, when I seen that Bigfoot-like creature a couple of years back, I kind of forgot certain parts of that story, and kind of stored it back in my mind until I was able to cope with myself about what had happened. I don't know, what do you think about it, Brent? Is that kind of something that you think, or is that something that you've ever done?
What do you mean, something like that I've done?
Like, have you ever had something happen that's either so shocking or something so terrifying that you kind of forgot about it and stored it in the back of your mind? I know there's one time that I was on the computer, of all things, and the four of us in our paranormal group were kind of sitting around, and up comes this graphic picture of someone that was murdered. It came up on this website. I remember the four of us forgot about it for, I guess, years. It's not that no one made us forget this memory. We kind of forgot it on our own. So, do you remember that, Brent?
Yeah. Well, I have had an instance like that, but that was like the whole, I guess the lady that I saw that was in my room when I was a child, I kind of suppressed that memory and put it off to the side until I actually met you guys, and then I was like, well, that because I found that you guys had some like stories that didn't make me sound crazy, because at the time I did feel like I was kind of crazy for things. Maybe it was just just a hallucination, but then I actually remembered it. It was very vivid, a very vivid dream, or not dream, but experience.
Yeah.
Well, there's some more details I could give about the incident of the abduction after the one that occurred 12 years after the Allagash incident. It said, Jack and Mary were brought to stand in front of a huge house-sized glowing object sitting on a blue light that enveloped its underside. The glow around the object itself was changing colors from white to yellow to orange and purple and back to white. No noise emanated from the object, but the air was filled with the acrid smell of ozone. And Jack and Mary were made to walk into the blue light under the object. Instantaneously, they were transferred inside of the glowing object. Mary was separated from Jack, who was made to undergo examination similar to the one that he and his friends had experienced 12 years earlier. After the examination, Mary rejoined Jack, and they were literally floated across the lawn from the craft to their house, through the unopened front door into their bedroom, where they went back to bed in a strange, lethargic state of mind. This experience left physical evidence behind in the form of burns on the bottom of Jack's feet. Jack also received a biopsy-like scoop mark above his ankle during another abduction. The scoop mark was located just above a scar left behind during an operation for an anomalous lump that had appeared overnight on Jack's legs several years prior. Jack's local doctor thought it was a cyst. but wasn't able to drain it, so Jack referred Jack to a surgeon who removed it. Jack was told that local pathologists did not know what it was and what had been sent to the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia, for further analysis. However, when we checked Jack's medical records, we found that it was sent to the military pathologist in Washington, D.C., where it was examined by a United States Air Force colonel. Attempts for further information about the anomalous slump were thwarted as the surgeon would not cooperate with an inquiry. That's pretty interesting, guys.
Yeah, Nick, Flycatch was asking me, he says, I guess in a message, he was asking me that, do you think that those memories could be suppressed, or do we just not want to talk about it? I don't know exactly what he's saying. He's saying something along the lines of, did we forget the memories, or are we just kind of saying that? Is saying how do we know that we're telling the truth about that?
Well, here's two things. First, from a psychology professor, this is from a psychology professor I had in college who talked about repressed memories and suppressed memories, and she said that there is no scientific evidence that memories of those kind occur. Now, however, from my own personal life and from other people I've talked to, it seems that we might not totally suppress a memory. However, we can push something so far back in our minds that we actively won't think about it for a while, like the white shirt incident, as we refer to it. Was that the murder pictures you were talking about that popped up on the internet one time, Jared?
Yes.
You know, with the bloody white shirt and everything. Yeah, we didn't talk about that for years. I did not actively think about that as a person until one night Jeremy brought it up in a conversation and said, yeah, remember the pictures of the guy mangled in the bloody white shirt that we saw a few years ago? And I was like, wow, yeah, that was insane. And then we talked about it for a little bit, and now we've kind of moved past it, and we make, we make jokes about it to deal with the gruesomeness of the experience, but we didn't talk about that incident for years, and it pretty much was suppressed in our subconscious until one of us remembered it one day and brought it up to all the others. So to answer Flycatch's question, I do believe that memories can be suppressed, and it takes some sort of probing or some sort of questioning to unearth those memories from the subconscious.
Well, on that note, we have 45 minutes about left in the show. We are going to go on a quick commercial break, and when we get back, we are going to continue our topic today. And you're listening to BFP Radio.
Use Ajax, the foaming cleanser. Clean pots and pans, just like a whiz.
Ajax cuts grease faster than any other leading cleanser.
Use the pain, the elbow tax, when you start cleaning with Ajax.
Ajax really polishes as it cleans.
So use Ajax, the foaming cleanser. Flush the dirt right down the drain.
My gosh, they're right. Foaming action Ajax makes even the dirtiest pan shine like new in a jiffy.
So
help the humans about to escape.
Get your paws off me, you dirty ape!
He can talk.
He can talk. He can talk. He can talk. He can talk. He can talk. He can talk.
I can sing!
Ooh, help me, Dr. Zayas.
Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas. Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas. Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas. Oh, Dr. Zayas.
Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas.
What's wrong with me?
I think you're crazy.
Want a second opinion?
You're also lazy.
Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas. Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas.
And welcome back to BFP Radio. Kind of like those old retro commercials.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, well, that you continue on with the Allagash abduction story, or any questions you may have had?
Yes, I will continue with more detailed analysis of the Allagash UFO incident. During the course of the investigation, we conducted witness background checks, examined medical records and diaries, cross-checked witness testimony, coordinated witness psychological profile tests, correlated witness accounts with other reports, and conducted 15 hypnosis sessions over a period of 14 months. The final 10-volume report numbered over 700 pages. It was made available to UFO researchers and became the basis of a book on UFO abductions to be published by Time Life and several TV documentaries. Well, one second, I got to take a sip of water. Because my voice is probably getting really froggy and cracky right now. But I was going to say, with the type of investigation that was carried out by these UFO researchers, we can see that they did quite a detailed and thorough job. I mean, the report was 10 volumes, and it numbered over 700 pages. They did hypnosis sessions over a 14-month period, and then they put them through a battery of psychological tests, lie detector tests, and hypnosis sessions. And they passed all these things with flying colors. I think that these tests can really give some credibility and really can verify that these gentlemen were telling the truth. Don't you guys agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
I think it definitely helps support them, yeah.
I mean, we're not just talking about going to the backwoods somewhere and finding some random Joe Blow and asking him for his story about getting abducted. These people were subjected to some of the most rigorous scientific tests of their time, and they passed. So I definitely think this makes the Allagash incident something which is true.
Yeah.
However, I'll continue on with more of the information in my notes. In summation, this UFO abduction case is unique in a number of ways. It involved 4 credible persons who all consciously shared the same close encounter with a UFO in 1976 during a canoe trip along the Allagash waterway in Northern Maine. All percipients is a new word I learned today, experienced missing time and relieved traumatic complementary UFO abduction experience under hypnosis. 2 of the abductees are identical twins, which was of great interest to their alien abductors, as it is also to Earth scientists. Our inquiry revealed that each of the witnesses exhibited the typical benchmark characteristic of other abductees. Lastly, all of the witnesses are artists and were able to provide detailed sketches of different aspects of their experience. This has provided the UFO research community some excellent impression relating to the appearance of alien beings, their instruments, and their craft. The many-faceted and intriguing elements of the Allagash abduction also provide a catalyst for a detailed correlation of witness experience with benchmarks exhibited in other abduction reports being investigated and studied. Such were derived from an exhaustive survey of 270 reported UFO abductions in the United States and abroad, compiled by Dr. Thomas E. Bullard of the University of Indiana. Some major similarities noted were alien interest in the reproductive system and the extraction of sperm from each of the witnesses, a series of UFO and related paranormal experiences that dated back to early childhood, physical marks on the recipients' bodies typical of those on the bodies of other UFO abductees, and the overnight appearance of a lump above the tibia of one of the twins. Yeah, remember and note that Jack Wiener had a weird growth on his leg, and that was sent to the United States government for analysis, and the cat Bailey over here is trying to butt his way in onto the phone and distract me from doing the show. But it's okay, Bailey. There you go, boy. I think that's very interesting that they sent this lump that they removed from his leg to Washington, D.C. for analysis, and then when these investigators from MUFON tried to get some more information about the lump, the government refused to go ask any questions or refused to respond at all. So I think we're dealing with something that's very weird and something that's very out of this world.
Well, yeah, sorry. Yeah, we have a question that's coming in.
Okay.
Yeah, they're asking, so how fast do you think that UFO came from the trees over to their boat when they were shining the light at it?
Wow. I don't want to say very, very, very fast because that's a very ambiguous answer. But I think that's the best answer I can give. I'm trying to think of something that we can picture. Here's something that this person might be able to picture in their minds. Imagine a video or maybe even a live takeoff of a jet, and you see how fast these F-15s and these other military planes go. Well, imagine that, but probably 3 to 4, 5 times faster. It could even be 10 times faster. So we're talking about something that goes more than 5 or 6 times as fast as a military jet. That's pretty darn fast. I don't know exactly the miles per hour or miles per second, but just to kind of give you a picture in your mind of how fast these things are going. Again, just imagine how fast a jet plane takes off, and imagine that 10 times faster.
Nick.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is, since you hear a lot of these UFO abduction stories, you hear about different types of lights being used as weapons, or they're used to abduct people. They see lights, or maybe when they're in the ship, they see lights that paralyze them. Do you think possibly when they shined the light at the UFO, you think maybe it took it as a threat? Or do you think maybe it's just like, oh, well, now they're out in the middle of the woods, and now there's some easy prey right here? Like, why personally do you think the light, they chose to abduct them?
Well, we can draw a few conclusions based on the information we have. One conclusion we can draw is that the aliens did think that they were a threat. However, I don't think in this case that would be what happened, because if they thought them to be a threat, it would be much more logical for the aliens to simply kill them and get rid of them than to abduct them and then do scientific experiments.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think, Brent? Do you think that maybe when they shine the light at them, do you think that was a sign of a threat, or do you think that they, like I was saying, it's easy prey type of thing?
Well, I mean, you got to look at it from, like a normal person's point of view, where, you're just minding your own business, and then you just get this light shined on you, and it kind of puts you in a, I guess not really a shock, but more or less like an awe factor type thing. That makes, it's not really like easy prey, but it kind of makes it, I guess, easier for them to abduct them, because it's kind of like a wow factor it gives them. Kind of gives them, I guess, like a unforeseen edge.
Well, I was going to say, recall that before they were abducted, one of the abductees said that they felt like they were being watched. So the aliens were probably already aware of the presence of these people out on the lake. So maybe the light had nothing to do with it at all. Maybe they just, they flashed S.O.S. and then the aliens were good. I think the aliens were going to abduct them anyway, regardless if they flashed the light to them or not. In this scenario, I mean, there are other scenarios like the one I described earlier where the police shined a spotlight on a UFO, and then the UFO played cat and mouse with it. That might have provoked something. But in this incident, I don't know if the light really had anything to do with the abduction itself.
Well, sorry, I'm just seeing our friend Mary Sorensen. I'm on her Facebook. Sorry about that. I'm just reading this. But no, at the same time, like I was saying, it's in the possibility that maybe this light, they thought it was something else. But also, maybe the aliens were just as surprised they were out there that they were seeing this object. I don't know. To me personally, if I was in the middle of the woods and you figure even you or me, if you see a light shining at you from somewhere in the woods, a spotlight hits you, you're going to be like, oh, what is that?
Yeah, again, the light could have drawn the aliens into their area, and could have, yeah.
Well, at the same time, what's his name? Gary Busey, of all people. He said he was riding his Harley out in the middle of I don't know if it was Death Valley or wherever. He claims that he was abducted by UFOs, but he said that the UFO didn't show itself until he turned on the headlight on his Harley. Maybe it's the same idea. Maybe Gary, if this story is true, that when he always repeats on TV, maybe it's the same idea. Maybe he was abducted by aliens because of the light from his Harley drew the UFO over there.
Well,
sorry,
Gary
that's just the story that came to mind.
Oh, well, I was going to say Gary's not from here anyway. He's a visitor. He's an astronaut. he's not from Earth. First off, secondly, I think that if that story is true, it definitely shows that aliens could be attracted by light. But I mean, like look at warfare in in the world. One way you can spot people at night if you're doing some night ops is if someone flashes some sort of a light. That's a dead giveaway that there's somebody there in that location. So maybe these aliens are just flying around, giving no mind to anything around them, and then they see these lights. Perhaps they use those to help track down people. That's definitely a possibility. I'm definitely not closed-minded to the subject or the possibility that lights draw the UFOs in.
Well, we have another question coming in, and they were wondering, what did these beings look like, Nick? What on this Allagash UFO? What did they look like, or if you could think of something that they resemble, what did they resemble?
Oh, okay. I will read you the description given by the abductees themselves under inducement of hypnosis. They said, the beings had large metallic glowing eyes with no lids, and their hands were insect-like with 4 fingers. That is the description given to investigators by the abductees under inducement of hypnosis. So basically they sound somewhat like gray aliens, the traditional humanoid-looking alien with large black eyes and the gray skin. But I think it is interesting to note that it said the hands were insect-like. And I don't know, there's a lot of different types of insects, so I don't know what an insect-like hand exactly would look like.
Yeah, I don't know what they mean by that.
So when you say insect-like, personally what comes to my mind is, you think possibly she was talking about how they have the bulb at the end of their fingers, like some people say, or the way gray aliens look? But I know that on the drawings that we've seen on numerous TV shows, they weren't gray aliens. They looked like something else. You remember that, Nick?
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, like I said, they're similar to gray aliens, but they're not grays themselves. So we're talking about a completely different alien species here. And I know I can only begin to venture, I can only begin to guess, rather, what these aliens are, where they're from, et cetera, et cetera. So the best I can give right now, with the information I have, is the description given by the abductees themselves.
Well, Nick, just curious, how many different, is there a book that these guys wrote, or is it mentioned thoroughly in anybody else's books that you know of?
I don't know if they wrote a book or not. I scoured the internet during the course of my prepping for the show, and I found various notes from different UFO investigators, but I didn't find anything about a book that these gentlemen had written. I know they've gone on and done several TV specials, and I think they speak at UFO conferences and those type of things, but I'm not aware of any books that they may have written. Are you, Jeremy?
I think, I'm trying to remember who it was. I know there's a book that mentions it. I think our buddy No Torres might have a book that talks about it, or Art Campbell might have covered it. I know Stanton Friedman said that he briefly mentioned it in one of his books, but I'm not sure how brief he's actually talking when he was on our show as our guest.
I'm not sure what publications specifically that these people have appeared in, but I know that they've gone around the country and they've talked about their incident rather candidly to educate the public about this strange phenomena of alien abductions. I have some more notes that are entitled The Aftermath of the Allagash incident. If you want me to read those, or if there's any other remarks, questions that need to be made, they can be made first.
Oh, yeah, you can keep going, Nick.
Okay. Well, when you chat with Anthony Constantino, I guess that's one of the lead investigators, there's always one inevitable question. Do you believe them? Them is a group of 4 friends who went camping on the Allagash waterway in Northern Maine in the summer of '76. Maybe saw them recently on the Joan Rivers show, where they detailed an ordeal in which they claimed they had a close encounter with a UFO. They are receiving national attention with the release of the Summer of the Allagash Abductions, written by Raymond Fowler, one of the other lead investigators, of Wenham, who is a director of investigations for the Mutual UFO Network. Those who are familiar with this case know that the full story, with all its mysterious and harrowing details, wasn't revealed until Anthony Constantino of Beverly placed the 4 men under hypnosis and revealed events that had been pushed into their subconscious. It was the most intense experience I've had as a hypnotist, said Constantino. The conscious part of the story began on Thursday of August 26, '76, when the 4 men went out on their camp in Eagle Lake, Michigan, and decided to go fishing. They built a bonfire, and when they went out to their canoe, they saw the bright light, and then they were abducted. But to cut to the chase, I guess what this guy is saying is when he did these investigations, it was very intense for him when he put these people under hypnosis and they gave their accounts to him. As a professional hypnotist, he's basically saying that he had never encountered anything like this in his career. So I think that is another big boulder of credibility for these gentlemen of the Allagash incident.
I was going to say, so you said that it disturbed the hypnosis, or I just call it the psychiatrist. Did it disturb them to do these hypnosis, you were saying?
Yes, Anthony Constantino was the hypnotist for the investigation. He's the one who put them under hypnosis for 14 months and conducted session after session to verify their story.
That's pretty odd, counting on how many people he probably puts under hypnosis.
What just happened?
How many people do you think he puts under hypnosis, Nick?
They probably are. Mr. Constantino would. Again, I can only guess. I know, especially I think during the 80s when this investigation took place, hypnotherapy was in vogue. It was very popular. It was popular, I think, from the mid-'80s to the early '90s. I mean, people still do it, but I mean, it was really, really popular back then. So at the time, he could have been seeing hundreds of people, maybe, I would guess 500 to 1,000 people a year, maybe more, but I can just say, based upon my knowledge of American pop culture history, that during the time that these investigations took place, hypnotherapy was rather popular. So this guy was seeing quite a number of people. Yeah. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? Oh, okay. I thought my phone had cut out. But here's a little more background information to these hypnosis sessions, which these gentlemen were exposed to. In 1989, so yeah, this took place right at the end of the 80s and in the early 90s, in the dark den of Constantino's Beverly home, each of the four men separately recounted a tale of being beamed aboard the UFO that night on Eagle Lake. Under hypnosis, they described the diffusely lit, sterile interior of the spacecraft that spindly-fingered, big-eyed, bald-headed aliens that Whiteley Strieber popularized with his nonfiction book Communion, as you mentioned earlier, and strange medical experience conducted on each man. Constantino says Fowler was cool and professional. As he observed the 12 hours of hypnosis sessions, Constantino admits that he had at times difficulty repressing his own astonishment. I'm the one who kept making faces at Ray like, I can't believe this. I can't believe what was done to these guys, says the hypnotist. Which brings us back to the question. Constantino conducted 3 4-hour hypnosis sessions with each of the four men. He heard their voices filled with fear as he explained how medical instruments were inserted into their bodies and how communication from the aliens was telepathic. Constantino says he went into the session with no preconceived notions, nothing more than a healthy curiosity about an unexplained phenomenon. So, this guy was rocked to his core after he had these hypnotherapy sessions with these gentlemen and how he uncovered the types of things they experienced. Like, it said that here in the investigator's notes that you could tell by the fear and by the way they talked, they were telling the truth. Now, Jeremy, when we interviewed one of the witnesses up in Ely, you described something very similar. You said you believed the guy. I mean, I do too, but you believed the guy the second he began talking because of the way he was communicating his story to us. Would you care to illustrate or talk about how you could tell he was telling the truth?
Well, this guy, I think that there was no doubt in my mind he had seen something. You could tell in the look in his eyes and the way he was almost shaking, or like he was hesitant to tell us the full story because he didn't know how we were going to react. This guy had seen something, I just don't know what, but judging by the way he was acting and the way he was presenting his information, I think that he did see something. But Brent, do you have any situations that you know of where somebody presented the information in almost a hesitant type, scared way that would make you believe what they said? what they were telling you?
What do you mean by they were scared to tell the story, or
Yeah, almost like
me?
Connie in Fairplay, for instance, the way she was telling us about the ghost stories. Can you tell us a example of that?
I guess it would be like when we went to Beatty, like I forget what their name was, but they were all really concerned about us going there to actually visit and see what was actually going on.
Well, what do you think, Nick?
What am I hearing? I'm hearing a weird noise.
It keeps going like really quiet for some reason. I don't know if their phones are messed
I
up.
think that's what I would say. Nick,
My call dropped.
I don't think that
ago.
our audience can hear you at the moment.
Wait, can you hear me now?
Yeah, sorry. I thought my phone was messing up. I was sitting there off and I heard Brent said a comment about it got quiet, and I was like, what?
Oh, I guess good old Blog Talk Radio is giving us a hard time. Do you need me to repeat what I just said?
So, Brent, how long was it quiet on your end, Brent?
At least for a couple minutes.
Well, Nick, continue on with what you were talking about, Nick.
Okay. Well, like I said, when I was talking to this gentleman and interviewing him, when he was speaking, his eyes got really big, and it's as if he was reliving the moment that he's seen these weird lights flying above the trees out here in northern Nevada. So Mr. Constantino and what he's describing is something that I, as an investigator, can personally attest to what he's talking about. There's a way that you can just kind of tell people. You can tell if people are lying or not. I mean, I'm going to refer back to my educational background, which is quite diverse and broad. I took an interrogation class. I learned how to be a professional interrogator in a way. I mean, I just got a crash course in it, kind of a 101 type thing, but there's certain ways you can tell if people are lying or not. Like, if I can remember correctly, if you ask a person a question and they look up to the sky and then they look to the left, that means they're going into the part of the brain that is responsible for retrieving factual information. But if they look to the right into the sky, you know, when people look at the ceiling and do one of those things and they look one way or the other, when they look to the right, they're going into the part of the brain which is responsible for narrative making, for story making, or in other words, lying. If they're looking to the right when you ask them a question, again, I think I'm correct on this. I haven't taken this course in a few years, but when you look to the right when you're asked a question, you're going into that part of the brain which is responsible for telling stories. So next time if you ask someone a question and they look to the right, they're probably fabricating something, and they're at least being a little deceptive with you. It might not be an outright lie, but it will be a little deceptive. The bottom line is you can look at people and tell if they're exhibiting deceptive behaviors or not. And there are a couple other little things, like if someone's trying to be deceptive with you, they'll start doing things like they'll put their hand on their face and maybe like scratch at themselves, you know, a little excessively, not to the point where they'd be bleeding or anything, but they get very fidgety, in other words. So if somebody's trying to be, they're trying to lie to you, they're trying to tell you a non-truth, they're going to start to get fidgety, and they're going to start to act nervous. So when we interviewed this gentleman out in Ely, we did not see him act nervous. He was very calm and scared to talk to us. He asked us if we thought he would be crazy if he told us this, and we said no. So when this hypnotist is saying that he saw them telling the truth, you can do that. I know some skeptics will come out and say, well, you can't tell if somebody's telling the truth just by the way they look. That's not science, that's pseudoscience, and that's a bunch of baloney and hogwash. Professional interrogators do it all the time. People that work for loss prevention departments in businesses across America, they use these ways of detecting deception. Law enforcement personnel, when they put someone in interrogation, they use these tools to detect deception. So if a skeptic says you can't tell if somebody's lying or not by the way they look, that they're talking through their backside because you can. And I guess as a final verdict, in a way, yes, sir?
So, Nick.
Yeah.
This Allagash, so what you're saying is you don't think that there's any way these people could have been lying, at least not from the way the professionals said it?
No.
A good question coming in is, do you think that these people, do they ever change their story at all between now and then when they talk about it?
No, their story, that's another fact. Their story has remained consistent for the past 30 years or so. 4 people have had the same story for the past 30 years. It has not changed. On top of the fact that they have been scrutinized to multitudes of very rigorous scientific tests. If you think that people can somehow beat all these things, yeah, then maybe they're lying, but I mean, beating a lie detector, a polygraph test is difficult. These guys passed with flying colors. Not only were they exposed to the polygraph examination, they had psychological examinations, they had these hypnotic these hypnosis tests, rather, and various other types of tests that they were scrutinized with in order to see if they were lying, and they passed with flying colors in each of them. So to think that they somehow could fabricate the story and stay consistent while passing all these various tests is incredible if you think they can lie. I would say you have a better chance of getting struck by lightning twice and then winning the lottery twice in a row. I mean, I really can't beat the idea in any more than I am now. I was going to say, from the words of the investigator himself, Anthony Constantino was asked, does he believe them? And he said, he goes, I do. After working with those guys, I'm scared. I still am. I think it's true. He thinks that they were tagged the way humans tag and study sharks and bears and then release them. The men were highly indignant when they were taken aboard this craft, and these things were done to them without their permission. And as the notes of the investigator concludes, when he interviewed Mr. Constantino, he asked him, do you believe him? And he said, yes, I do. And not only did he believe them, he became frightened himself by these stories. So they were convincing enough to frighten a professional individual such as Anthony Constantino. So I think that really resonates with the truth.
Did he have any experiences?
Do I have any experience?
No, did the investigators, like Anthony Constantino, did he have any experiences that were connected or related to these UFO sightings with these, these other guys after this?
Oh,
I just didn't know if that was maybe one of the reasons he became fearful. Did he become fearful for himself because maybe he was experiencing something?
He could have been, but with the information I have, I don't know. I'm ignorant to
Nick.
Question. Yeah.
There's a question coming in from our Facebook. They're saying, if you were the fifth Allagash, or do you think there might be, there's two different questions. If you were the fifth Allagash, and just say that you hadn't come forward, do you think that you would come forward now? Or do you think that you would remain silent for some reason? And do you think that there might have been a fifth person, or do you think no? That's what the question is. And then there's another one I'll ask you after that.
Okay. Well, if I was, there's a hypothetical fifth abductee, I don't think I would probably come out. I would say to myself, well, the story's been told, and I'm just going to kind of go away knowing, I'll live and I'll die knowing that the truth is out there. And I don't know, maybe that's just my personality. I wouldn't want to draw any attention to myself or toot my own horn, probably because the public then would probably just say that I'm coming out to make a quick buck, which would probably be the motivation for coming out so late and so far from the incident itself. And do I think, is there a fifth person? No. There is no factual evidence to lead me to believe that there was another abductee during the incident.
And Nick, the other question we're being asked is, okay, you said that these aliens took some kind of fluids from them, or they had taken things out of these people, like tissue samples.
Yeah.
Where do you think they stored those and how? And then also, where are they now? Is what the question is. That's not me asking this, by the way. I'm not trying to be silly. This is where are they now, and where did they put them, and how did they keep them from spoiling?
Okay. Well, they would most likely store the samples in some type of a lab setting, I guess, if you want to look at what we do with samples here on Earth. They would probably use some type of a cryogenic freezing technology, like we take sperm from people at sperm banks and we store them at very cold temperatures using liquid nitrogen. The aliens probably do something similar to that. And as to where the samples are now, probably in a galaxy far, far away a long, long time ago.
Well, do you think maybe if they have different samples like this, do you think maybe they have a place where they store all of these? I guess that's kind of my, I don't know, you know what I mean? If they actually, I don't even know what I mean, but if they take these samples, they have to be keeping them somewhere, I guess, is what the person's trying to get at.
Yeah, they definitely would have a place to store these samples. I mean, again, like I said, they're probably stored in a lab setting somewhere, either on a spacecraft A or on another planet B, or maybe there's some type of space station that these aliens or a mothership that these aliens are coming from that these samples might be stored on. That's the only possibilities I can think of.
Well, my other personal question for Brent is, do you think that this craft was tracking these individuals on their camping trip, or do you think that it was just pure chance that they came upon this thing?
I guess just from hearing the story, it kind of seems like they just were there at the wrong place at the wrong time.
I was going to say, because it sounds like they've seen this object a few days before the light incident had occurred. Like, possibly it was following them, some people think. I was just curious. What do you think, Becky?
Well, you said that they felt like something was watching them, so I think anytime you have that, feeling, it's something to listen to and pay attention to, and it probably means that the UFO or something was nearby. I'm guessing that it was following them.
Well, Nick,
yeah.
In the last 3 minutes of the show, I was going to say, is there any way that you could talk about a summary of today's show, and I'll talk a little bit about the next show?
Okay, well, today we talked about the Allagash abduction incident where 4 college buddies went out on a camping trip in Northern Maine, and one night they decided to go on a fishing trip, and they seen a UFO flying in the trees. It looked like a star. They shined a flashlight at it, and then they found themselves on the shore at their campsite where the campfire was burned out, and it's as if many hours had gone by between initially seeing the spacecraft and then being put back on the shore. And then years later, they were subjected to various scientific tests which proved that they were most likely abducted and tested on by aliens from another planet.
Well, next show, we're doing it at 1 p.m. on this Saturday. We're going to have Robert Bartholomew on the show. He wrote a book on Champ, which is the lake monster over in Lake Champlain, over by New York. And he's supposed to talk about his book and his Champ research. It's supposed to be a great show. And, again, March is our UFO month here at Bigfoots Pad Radio. We're going to be continuing having shows on aliens and UFO-related topics. And the other ones, after having the Robert Bartholomew show, we're going to have man-made UFOs, and we're going to have No Torres, the famous UFO author and lecturer on the show. He's going to be talking about some of his books. And again, I'd like to thank everybody that listened into today's show, which includes our callers, our fans and listeners on our listening chat room. And I'd like to thank my co-hosts. And again, thanks for listening to today's show, everybody. Don't forget to tune in this Saturday.
What we see and what we think we know and believe. There are worlds. There are things that we cannot understand. Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations team is in charge of the field. Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations team